ladies and gentlemen, what's up? This is Questlove Supreme. Wait, I believe, is this our first Questlove Supreme back together since what? Like last April? Since the Oscars? I feel like I've not spoken to you guys.
Yeah, I think this is the first one.
Maybe we did like one episode or something like that. But yeah, I was about to say, like, it's been a long time. We've been doing a bunch of 101s, but I'll start off our episode, people, by saying that because of the ungodly amount of hours that I've spent at the Wynwood train station or taking the 105 and the 103 bus to my insurance job to pay for a demo, I feel just a little bit more connected to our guest today than any other guest that's been Philadelphia adjacent. I'll put it that way. No, I got excited. I get excited when any Philly adjacent guest comes on to Questlove Supreme. And no matter how much New York tries to claim you, I know for a fact that you did hard time at Montgomery County. You know, once a Philadelphian, always a Philadelphian. Anywho,
Philly, and I lived in Pittsburgh, and I lived in Erie. I lived in lots of different.
Really?
Yeah, Yens. You're the first person that's used Yens.
My mother is from Pittsburgh, so I have definitely a fair share of family members that have educated me on just life in Pittsburgh in general. I'll say that our guest today, of course, is a legendary singer, legendary songwriter, producer. Let's not forget a kick-ass guitarist, member of two legendary units. The first, of course, coming to us as a member of the Runaways, a band who pretty much defied all logic and stuck to their guns and pretty much had inspired a generation of musicians and creators around the world. And of course, the second band needs no introduction. Of course, I'm speaking of her namesake, Joan Jett, and the Blackhearts, class of 2015 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. What can I say? Without her, I don't even want to limit it to just there's no Riot Grrrl movement. There's a whole portion of hard rock and punk and a lot of post late 80s, early 90s bands that formed in LA that really wouldn't have existed without our guest today. So without further ado, welcome Joan Jett to Questlove Supreme. So were you talking to us right now? Were you speaking to us?
I'm home in New York, out on Long Island at the beach.
You're still Long Islander? Okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I live at the beach. Yeah, I'm like right on the water though. Like,
all right. You know what? I discovered in the pandemic, and I keep telling everyone, especially New Yorkers, this, and they don't believe me. New York doesn't realize they have their own Mulholland Drive and they have their own Venice Beach. Now, there was a point where I think the main train was going to shut down that leads to Williamsburg, causing, it was going to shut down for like 2 years or whatever while they did reconstruction, causing a whole borough to literally relocate elsewhere. Like restaurants started shutting down and all of them basically relocated to Long Beach. So when a friend of mine made me visit out there, I didn't know what to expect. Like I was personally expecting, kind of Yusuf Hawkins, like post Benson Hershey's, whatever. And no, I went out there and it's like, yo, it is the shit.
It was pretty beat up. Like when I moved here in 1979.
So you're like a loyalist. You've been there through everything. So
I moved here right after the Runaways pretty much right after the Runaways broke up, which is 79. Then I met my partner, Kenny Laguna. And
what do you make of it now? Because like literally it's like if I didn't have to be in Manhattan at like the drop of a dime, like I would actually move out to Long Beach. Like they totally, I don't want to say just regentrified it, but they literally
They did.
Okay.
They're making it, I don't know what you want to call it.
Nice, in quote.
Yeah, nicer.
Yeah, I wasn't ready for that. So
when I moved here, it was they had just opened all the mental institutions or something. So when I got here, there were crazy people walking all over the place. And I could have bought my apartment for like 20 grand or something. But, those days are long gone.
The price has definitely gone up. So
yeah. And now people want places like this. So even more so. And
anyone's like trying to sell their house right now in Long Beach can easily cake in high six figures to almost $1 million.
Definitely.
Like, that's where it is now. People are like headed out there. So I start off each episode with the question, what do you remember what your first musical memory was?
I can't be positive, but it would be either
just one that you remember, not the technical one. Like
all right.
Singing Mary Had a Little Lamb at 8 months. But I mean,
but I think of my father playing classical music, or my parents listening to Johnny Mathis or something like that, Frank Sinatra.
Okay. How long did you live in? Well, technically, you're born in Wynwood, right?
Yeah, I was born at Lankenau Hospital.
Lankenau, yes.
Okay. So wherever that is.
Yeah, it's quasi at Wynwood.
But I moved very early. I moved at like 6 months old and moved to Pittsburgh. So I can't really say I grew up in Philly. I was just born there.
So when you have memories of your childhood, what's the city you think of?
Maryland.
Oh, okay.
I moved to Maryland from Erie, Pennsylvania, when I was 8. So I lived in Maryland, Rockville, Maryland, from 8 to 13. So really formative years, when you come into your own, I guess, go from being a kid to puberty and, all those big changes that happen from, I'd say, to 8 to your teen years.
What effect does that have on someone that, where you don't have actual roots, like you kind of move every other year, or every 2 or 3 years? Like, what effect does that have on you as far as like?
That's a good question. I wonder how much of it, I'm doing psychology on myself. I was thinking about this the other day. How much of it was my lifestyle from a very early age, from being on the road, just constantly moving, and also, but growing up that way too, never really being in one place very long. Longest was Maryland when I lived there 5 years. So maybe you don't really feel secure in making friendships or any kind of relationships. So, I don't know, maybe I tend to keep people at arm's length.
Okay.
It's not that I'm unfriendly. It's just, I'm not good with intimacy, I suppose.
That's real. Do you have siblings or like, what's the, no, it's
yeah,
not.
That's a real
answer.
Well, I'm not good at faking it.
Hey, man.
I feel you.
That's a rarity.
I have a brother and I have a sister. They both still live in California. Okay. My brother's in San Diego. My sister's in North Hollywood.
Are you the baby, the middle, or the oldest?
No, I'm oldest.
Okay.
I'm the oldest. I said, I'm out of here.
Oh, instantly when you...
when I was 16, pretty much, and I left and formed a band and was not really at home much more after that. I think I see the repercussions of that now later, but I don't know if that's my lifestyle or if it's from not really having that connective family thing.
As the result of moving, was that because you were an Army brat or just?
My father was an insurance man, so traveling insurance man in the olden days. Is that a real thing or was that a hustle? I don't know.
Hey, I went out to
either way.
I went out to Wynwood to sell insurance. So I don't know. Maybe I was like working for your father.
Yeah. But I guess they'd have areas and they'd go and I don't know if it was a door to door. I really don't know. I didn't discuss it with him that much. But that's what my mother told me anyway. Traveling salesman.
Okay.
So we moved around. Yeah.
Do you remember the first album that you purchased with your own money?
I should know this, right?
Or single.
It probably was an Osmond Brothers record.
Thank you. Oftentimes
maybe I shouldn't be that honest.
No.
This is the show for it. Yeah, you're getting too honest now.
I was going to say most people get stumped with this because I think for a lot of us, the answer is always going to be an uncool answer. You know, I think shut up, Steve, because he knows.
No, I'm thinking of my own as the least coolest, but yeah.
Well, no, I would naturally tell people like, oh yeah, Jackson 5 or whatever, but the real answer was Neil Sedaka. But like, how's that going to look in print? You know what I mean?
Not great.
Right.
Mine could have been the Jackson 5 too. I mean, you know what? Yes. I just got done watching the movie that you won awards for. I've been it is so great, and it reminds me of growing up, because I feel like the music I grew up listening to was a lot more diversified and a lot blacker than people would even know, I suppose. It just seemed to be a lot of all those songs, all those bands that were in that. Very familiar with it all. But it feels like stuff I watched as a kid.
Right.
You know, I don't know. I loved it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think for a lot of people, especially with this movie, the kind of the underline or the undertone of it all is basically like this was, it was easily lost in history. It sat in someone's basement for 50 years. So, for it to get out, one was the miracle, but, to also just let the world know about, contributions to culture. But thank you for
absolutely.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely. But even more than just the music, I see, what they were saying about the change, that they were right upon this change that was happening in society, and just the way people looked at themselves and stuff. And it was, really quite poignant, I thought, and really on the,
I appreciate that. Did you come from a musical family, like a cousin or any of those things? Or
I really think everybody, I think if you gave them, to answer your question, nobody, not that they actualized, but I believe, because my family all tended to be creative, but never actualized it. They were too fearful or didn't think it was their place, or,
right.
Like I know my dad loved art and he loved to draw or paint, and he should have done that, and my mom, all those things. My brother, I know that he would have liked to play an instrument, but didn't pursue it. And I'm sure my sister, she's an artist too. She makes things with her hands. So yeah, they all have that thing, but didn't really get the chance that I kind of just grabbed and took.
All right. So what was the entry of, or at least the moment that you felt like, okay, this is what I want to do, like the curiosity factor? What was that moment for you?
Hearing songs like Bang a Gong by T-Rex, just hearing certain songs on the radio, All Right Now by The Free, because there was something that was a little out of tune with one of the guitars on the rhythm guitar. And something about that made me want to go, I want to make those sounds. It was something that connected with my bones, and with my crotch. And even as a little kid, I knew it. I didn't know what the word was, but I knew that it resonated deep inside me, and I wanted to make those sounds. So I think, though, I'm just lucky that the way my life moved, because it could have been anything. I could have moved on to another thing that I love. I mean, I loved horses. I rode horses for a while. I mean, the guitar, my family, I got this guitar. I tried to learn how to play it, but I didn't really have anyone to play with. So I kind of just learned the basic chords and put it down. Then my family moved
like
to
the Sears catalog guitar.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Everyone starts off with, okay.
Yep. And then my family moved to Los Angeles. So now I'm like, okay, now I'm going to a place where there's got to be other girls that want to do what I'm doing. There's got to be, in Los Angeles, there's got to be other girls that want to play rock and roll. And, I was right. And I'm sure if I'd really looked around Maryland or, any of the big cities or gone to DC, I would have found it too. But I just wasn't thinking that way, because all my magazines that I was reading geared me towards Hollywood.
Okay. For you, though, how usual or unusual, especially in your formative years, like, was guitar encouraged, or, oftentimes, or was there someone like, you might want to do piano or the clarinet, or like something that
a girl
would want to do?
I did play the clarinet in school, but I wasn't very good at it, and I wasn't that interested. And now I wish I had paid attention, and that I'd learned to play just so I could read music. But, just to be able to play other instruments. I was made to feel quite inadequate. I just worked with the trombone shorty, and it made me feel, bro,
really?
You see that guy on, he's a little kid with a big trombone,
Right.
But, now he's an older guy, but he's just, he's one of those prodigy people.
So did you just learn to play just mainly by ear, or you still don't read music now? Just ear? That's what's up.
Yeah, just ear with my records and stuff.
Were you encouraged? Because I think that especially with anyone, with a woman grabbing an instrument in the 60s, in the 70s, hell, even 80s almost, like, I'm certain that there has to be some sort of figure there that says, women can't do that, and women,
Everybody said that. Nobody encouraged me. Nobody.
Really?
Only my parents, who told me when I was a little kid that I could be anything I wanted to be. So now they couldn't turn around and say, well, you can be anything except a guitar player. So, they just thought I'd grow out of it, that I'd phase out of it and go into something else, which I think might have happened had I not moved to California and been able to find other girls. Then maybe I would have gone on to something else, but that didn't happen. And I went to LA, and nobody thought it was a good idea. My guitar teacher said, girls don't play rock and roll, which I knew right away what he meant.
Did they want you to play acoustic instead?
Yeah.
Like follow Joni Mitchell, or,
Yeah, pretty much. Much. But I knew exactly what that meant. Girls don't play rock and roll. So what are you saying to me? You're saying, you're not saying girls can't master the guitar, because I'm in school, I'm playing clarinet, there's girls next to me playing violin and cello, playing Beethoven and Bach. So you're not saying that you can't master the instrument. What you're saying is rock and roll is sexual by its nature. So if women are playing rock and roll and singing rock and roll, they're singing about sexuality, and they're owning it. And we're not comfortable with that. And I knew that as a kid. Even then I knew that just you weren't allowed to it, but it had something to do with sex. And I was just like, no, because this is so not about sex for me. I want to be able to do this because I want to do it. Mick Jagger rides out on a big inflatable penis. I want to do what the Rolling Stones do. It had nothing to do with that. It was about fairness. I know it doesn't make sense, but it was about fairness.
It makes total sense.
Quality and the right thing, what's right. I mean, I'm not hurting people,
Right.
I'm playing rock and roll, for Christ's sake. Give me a break. So that's the kind of fire that would fuel me on through all this stuff.
See, I never had the pleasure of having a conversation with anyone who, is pretty much either first out the gate, or at least in the pioneering stages of starting a movement, to even ask them what their mind state is, because oftentimes, our greats leave, and, before we get to ask them about their process. And so, I always wanted to know because even when I was in high school, like I think I was honest with one teacher, like what I was going to do. Like, I'm start a band with da-da-da-da-da. And, I went to high school with Boys to Men, and they were just,
oh, wow.
Yeah, they were like on fire. And, it's sort of like, well, are you guys going to be Boys to Men popular? Or you're just going to be one of these local acts? And, I wasn't thinking that deep about my process or anything.
Right.
I think he tried to talk me out of like pursuing my career. So
yeah, see, I don't understand that about people. This is what I want to know about people and dreams. You're sitting there shooting the shit with your friends, and you say what you said that you want to play, and someone tries to talk you out of it.
Right.
Why is everyone geared to try to talk you out of it, as opposed to saying, yeah, man, that sounds interesting, go for it. And at least if you don't make it, you gave it a shot. You gave your dream a shot. What is that about people?
I think some people get offended or they get intimidated when they see that your dreams don't include them. And so they just try to shoot the shit down. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like if I run a hamburger stand, the last thing I want you to do is become a vegan. You know what I mean? like don't do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I also think that oftentimes I think in America, we often train ourselves to do the safe thing. Like, I think hopefully my generation is the last generation, which you'll hear like fall back on something safe. Like, I definitely heard that from every uncle.
Yeah,
like
COVID done showed us ain't shit safe, cuz do what you want to do.
Yeah, right. Totally.
Exactly. So so you're a musician in Los Angeles and you're young at the time. Had this been, 2007 or whatever, you would have the aid of the internet to help you. But what is the process of finding what you're specifically looking for, which I assume are women that play instruments and are passionate about it just as you are? Like, so what's the process of searching for them? And at any point were you just like, at least in the Runaways stages, were you like, okay, anyone, male, female, can join? Or for you, was it like, I have to find all women?
No, and for the Runaways, it was definitely an all women thing, because we hadn't really been done, or if it had been done, it'd been done years earlier with full grown women, but not teenage girls. And so I just had this thing, and I wanted to do it, and I didn't see a good reason to change that plan, and give up so easy, saying, oh, this might be hard. But it's hard to think back and realize how different it was then than it is now, and how easily you can reach out to people on the phone, on the internet.
Right.
I mean, you're talking, we had rotary phones, we're talking about phone booths. We're talking about, you didn't get a hold of people. If you got a hold of somebody, you met them at a certain time on a certain corner,
right,
or at a certain place. There was none of this.
So Phonte right here, Phonte is probably, to his fan base, probably most known for being one of the first musicians to really take advantage of I'll say the positive aspect of internet colonization. One of the bands that he started was a group called Foreign Exchange, in which where's
Nick? Now he's in Wilmington.
Right, but where
he's
was
like 2 hours from me. At the time, he was in the Netherlands, and we just recorded that album. We met on OK Player on Amir's site, and we just started trading files online back and forth, and we completed the album. We didn't meet each other until it was over.
Wow.
And that was in 2002.
So they didn't even meet yet before they made a classic album. You know what I mean? And so, so what is the process of how do you find these
at that time,
birds of a feather, if you will? Yes, in that time.
I believe what we did is we put an ad in, what was it, the LA Weekly?
Okay.
Maybe. And we went out to a lot of the clubs that I would hang out at, and I would just survey the crowd and look for girls.
Wow. This is around 74, 75?
This would have been 75.
Okay, so you're like 16,
like
15,
from
16.
Like after August 5th.
So, all right, this is what I have to know. You're in California. Were you a driver? Did you have a car?
Oh, I didn't drive. No. Buses. I took a lot of buses, and also my mother was, sort of complicit in all this. So she would drive me to rehearsal. She would take me to the club sometimes and pick me up late at night. Yeah.
So clubs weren't sweating like, of course, now we live in a place where you got to show, damn near 12 forms of ID to get in anywhere, or else your license gets shut down.
But the club I went to was it was for teenagers. So there was no booze. So my mom didn't have to worry about that. So there was no booze there. And I don't think she was really thinking about drugs or anything like that.
Who were any of your contemporaries also sort of in that movement that later became names themselves? Like,
no, not really.
Once like Sherry and Lita, your band members sort of like come to play. How did you know that, okay, this is it. They're the ones.
Well, we didn't have that many choices, number one. You know what I mean? Okay. So it was more like, do we want to try? Well, first it was the drummer and myself, Sandy West and I. We met.
Oh, Sandy, right. Okay.
Yeah. And so we were solid as hell, Sandy and I. I took 4 buses to her house in Huntington Beach.
4?
And 4 buses. And I set up in her rec room and we played, some just basic Chuck Berry rock and roll progression, and said, it was really good. Sandy played with a lot of guy, high school band kind of things. And so she was used to playing with bands, but usually guys. So we really locked in, and we called Kim Fowley, who was our producer,
right,
who became our producer, and said, hey, check it out. Put the phone down, played for him. He said, it sounds great. Let's go find other girls. So it was really, from there, we started looking. We started looking in clubs, and I think put an ad in a paper and stuff like that.
Who came up with the name The Runaways?
I did.
Okay. So already you had your marketing plan.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I've been thinking about this for a little while now, a couple months at least.
Did you guys have a daily regimen, or was just like whenever time was free, then we'll rehearse or whatever? But
yeah, I really, to tell you the truth, I can't remember. I mean,
like, how can you be a kid and also start this very adult thing? Like, were all parents involved, like encouraging of this, or?
No, our parents were involved, but a couple of the girls were a year younger than me. So they were like in 11th grade. So they still had school to deal with. And yeah, not all the parents were thrilled about it. But in the end, I don't know. I guess they didn't want to fight their daughters or something. But for school, I got pretty good grades. And I took my GED. I was already in 12th grade, but I wanted to get out a little bit early so we could go on the road. So
okay. I always wanted to know, I guess in the initial incarnation of the Runaways, like, why weren't you the lead singer, or why didn't you want to be the focal point?
I was way too shy at the time. I was way too shy. I had no confidence. I had no confidence and was just really shy. It was amazing that I could do what I wanted, what I was doing, just getting on stage with the guitar.
But did you have your voice then, or you just kept it a secret, or?
I sang background vocals. Yeah, I could sing. Okay. Yeah, I could sing. I did wind up singing half of the leads on the first Runaways album because Cherie didn't want to sing the rock and roll harder songs. She felt that she didn't have the voice for it, or didn't feel comfortable singing some of them. So the ones she didn't feel comfortable singing, I sang the leads, and I sang backup on everything else. So I did have a voice, but I just wasn't comfortable being the focal point.
Man, gotcha.
So at this point in developing the band, who are you looking up to? Because again, you guys have ushered in an era, and pretty much your band's existence just basically starts a domino effect on, again, people that come 10 to 15 years later. But in 75, 76, when you guys are doing this band, like, who's cool to you? Like, are the Stones and Zeppelin sort of like, that's old, whatever music? Like, who's grabbing your attention? Like, that's whose ass I want to kick.
Yeah, I mean, I know I was disappointed with the Stones when they started doing
like, you weren't at Exile on Main Street first?
Yeah. I wanted them to.
You didn't like some
girls.
Rock
and roll. I didn't like them
doing some girls. Yeah.
Well, it was fine, but I don't know. I guess I wanted them to be playing something that I could really rock out to. Whatever.
No one stays rebellious forever.
Like, I know that. Believe
there's
me.
A good 7 year.
I get it now.
Before you start doing your classical record or whatever.
No, I get it now. Believe me. But I think I really started looking to the punk rock stuff right away, because the Ramones came out, I believe, in 1975, late 75.
Right.
The very first Ramones album. And all the punk stuff, rock stuff I was reading a lot about. And I really gravitated very quickly to a lot of those bands because I felt, kinship with a lot of them.
I mean, there's always like groups or artists or albums that are always on someone's canon, like their top 5 records of all time. You always see the names, whatever. And sometimes you don't do the investigation of it. And, of course, I'm always seeing the Ramones named everywhere. And finally, I listened down from top to bottom like 2 years ago and realized like how genius and hard it is to really convey emotion and lyricism in less than 2 minutes.
Hey ho, let's go.
Yo.
Yeah. That shit a jam though. that shit jamming.
Exactly. So for you, were you seeing that there was a science here, like, the type of rock that you were fed as a child is way different than the ideas that you're about to spew onto the world. Like for you is like, look, we gotta, don't bore us, get to the chorus, 2 minutes flat.
Right. Well, no, you gotta see, the thing was, didn't really transfer that much into our music. It might have translated a little bit to my songwriting, but as a group, as a band, most of the girls weren't really into the punk rock the way I was. They were much more, they liked heavier bands, more like
the more mainstream
Zeppelin or
gotcha.
That heavier stuff. Rainbow,
right.
Richie Blackmore, that kind of stuff. So, we didn't really see eye to eye on our hangout music. So we didn't, we had to come from a place where we met in the middle. So, I just always considered what we did to be basic rock and roll.
What was the division of labor as far as the songwriting is concerned, and what you're going to cover, or who's going to write what? Like who's the primary songwriter of the group? Was that your job?
I think it was me for the most part. It was me. I wrote either songs with Kim Fowley as the lyricist, or I wrote songs by myself. I think I wrote a couple with some of the other girls, but not too many. And so I guess I was the primary one.
Back then, like, it was sort of hard for you guys to break out in the States, but yet, the magic's working instantaneously when you go overseas. Like, how much of a mind fuck was that to kind of, because that's very similar to hip hop. Like, my band had to move to Europe for 5 years.
Right.
Just so that, and quote unquote, pull a Hendrix and then come back to the United States, like that sort of thing. Like,
right.
In your mind, was it a dream deferred, or like, wait, what's going on here? Or what were your feelings on?
I thought, a lot of different feelings. Yeah. One part of me had wished that we had the same sort of response in the States, but it was so different around the world. In Japan, it was like all girls,
right?
And like the Beatles, like mania, people fainting, girls fainting. And I think it kind of scared a couple of the other girls. I was exhilarated, but there were people who were rocking the car, and we'd never really had that kind of experience at all. I mean, anybody in their right mind should probably be scared, but I didn't get too scared. And then in Scandinavia, another place, all girls, all wearing real pacifiers and sucking on these pacifiers. Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, I didn't get it. And I never found out what it was. I guess it was just some kind of fad or fashion that they were doing, but pretty wild.
There's nothing that Cherry had on a particular photo shoot or something?
No. They were giving us the ideas,
okay.
But then in England, England gets, I think they got the Runaways a lot more than Americans did, but they still, the English love to take the piss out of you. So we took a lot of shit, but there were a lot of people, I think, there that liked us too. We did well in Germany, and I think Europe did pretty well, but we didn't tour there a lot, so I don't know face to face. And record sales, I can never go by really, because, who knows?
So in retrospect, what would you categorize the genre? Are you guys at the forefront of the LA punk movement? Were you just hard rock? Were you kind of the torchbearer for what will eventually become like the glam metal scene that would happen 15 years later with those groups in LA?
Yeah. Like, I mean, I always just called it rock and roll. And I think what we did was punk rock to its core, just dictating what you're going to do and doing it and not listening to what anybody says. And I mean, I thought, and doing that in the context of how society treated you at the time, I think it was the ultimate punk rock stuff. Even for the girls that didn't want to claim punk rock, they were being punk rock just by what they were doing. They didn't have to play it. So
you guys pretty dissolved almost as quick as you came aboard. Do you remember how eventful or uneventful the last night of the group was before you realized that it's not happening anymore?
I don't remember if it was. I know it wasn't a happy time, and we knew it was New Year's '78 into '79 was our last gig, and we knew it was our last gig because we had decided to disband after that because I didn't want. I felt like I said, that musical separation was there between girls that want to play heavier music and me, and so I thought, man, I don't want to get fired from the band I started or something weird. So let me just quit and you guys can do your thing. And
I can assume that Lita was one that wanted to do the heavier stuff, right?
It was not animosity. It was not, it was not an anger or anything. Right. We weren't going, fuck you.
Right.
It was just like, because we had been friendly, we didn't want it to be weird. And it's just like, I'll just go. You guys do your thing.
It's weird. Before, I got to admit that in watching the documentary, I didn't realize that, quote, that Lita Ford was the Lita Ford in the Runaways, because I guess my dealings with Lita, anytime there was always a person that wanted to give, I'm not even making any Nugent comparisons, but if there was anyone that ever wanted to give like hip hop the middle finger with a quote, it was always Lita Ford.
It was Lita Ford.
Really?
So, I knew her more for her disdain of hip hop than I did for like what she actually did. Yeah, no, for real. Like,
I guess I should say I'm not surprised, but
I knew her for her quotes of like why she hated hip hop. So I always knew that whenever I hear the name Lita Ford, I'm like, what happened now? But
oh man, so
but then when I started the thing, I was like, oh, she was a Runaway. I get it now. So
I don't want no guilt by association though, because.
Hey man, we all
you good. You made light of day. I used to watch that movie every day after school when I was in like third grade. So we good.
Son, I forgot. With Michael. As a 21-year-old, are you feeling like, okay, well, I did that. What do I do now? For you, it's just like on to the next. Like, did you?
No, I was feeling like it was time to die. Is what I was feeling like. Man. I was feeling like the whole city of LA was laughing, going, we told you it wouldn't work. We told you girls can't play rock and roll, and I was not taking care of myself. I was drinking too much. My dreams were crushed, and I had no friends, it was like everybody was gone. You know what I mean? They disappear in that level and you're just alone with your thoughts and your beer or whatever it was I was drinking.
So how long did the sort of the feeling of funk last before you started I assume that, starting the Blackhearts was your eventual.
Yeah. Well, actually I met my partner, Kenny Laguna, my songwriting partner, and he became my producer and manager because nobody else wanted to deal with me. We met to write songs for a movie that I had contracted to do before the Runaways broke up. I had to write 6 songs for a film. Okay. And so my manager at the time, a guy named Toby Mamus, knew Kenny and knew that he had worked with a lot of bubblegum bands in the 60s and knew that he could write songs quickly and should be easy to work with. So he called him and said, would you come out and meet Joan to do this project with her? And so Kenny did. And we met and hit it off and really became good friends the first day. I don't know what it was that he saw in me, but he thought I was the real deal, I guess. And we wrote some songs, and then I said, would you produce these songs that we wrote together? And he did. And then, as we continue, I didn't have anybody to manage me. And so he took that on too, thinking it would be easy, that he could get me deals and this and that.
Right.
But no, he started getting no's. He knows a lot of people in the business, and people just told him no. And then I think it got to him where, oh my God, this is real. And then he got pissed, because then he saw the sort of, just prejudice and misogyny, straight out bullshit. So right. I think, that lit that fire in him to help fight for me.
So it took about 2 years. First of all, whose idea was it to recover or to redo I Love Rock and Roll? I don't think many people know that that's a cover song.
Yes. I saw that song when I was in England with the Runaways, and I saw this band on Top of the Pops called the Arrows, and they were playing the B-side to their hit. And the B-side to their hit was I Love Rock and Roll. I don't know what their hit was.
Okay.
The B-side was I Love Rock and Roll. And I'm like,
B-side wins again.
Wow, that sounds like a hit to me. And I went out to the record shop and bought the 45 thinking, the Runaways, maybe we could do this and it'll be a hit. But then I was reminded that by the other girls that we'd covered Lou Reed's Rock and Roll on the first album, on our first Runaways album. And, I guess didn't want rock and roll in every title and every album, kind of. So sort of blew it off for a while. And I just held on to the song. And then after the Runaways, thought, here we go.
See, life lesson. You got to go with your gut.
Yep.
That's the second time you learned that lesson. So how different does life turn for you once that song makes you pretty much a household name?
Well, just I think the fame level rose, and we had more people at our gigs and stuff, and made a little bit more money. Finally, could make a little bit more money. So those things changed a little bit, but for the most part. But
is that also a scary feeling? Because I think oftentimes when someone gets to success, the first thing in their head is, oh God, how am I going to sustain this? How am I going to make it last? What's the next single? Yeah,
there was part of that, but I wasn't like so far up there that it was, when you're number one and you're, I don't know, I guess, on one level, you can't stay there forever. And I guess, you have to have your next one. I guess initially we knew what that next one was going to be, which was Crimson and Clover.
Crimson, yeah.
Right. And
what was it about that song that made you want to choose that?
Damn it. Amir, take my only question of the day. Okay.
It's a great song.
Go ahead, Steve.
You want to say it? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Ask me.
What made you want to cover Crimson and Clover with Honey James and the Shondells?
No, answer the question. I got to turn the light on. Go ahead.
And when I met Kenny and I knew that he played those songs, and I'm like, so you played the Moni Moni, dun, dun, dun. And he said, yeah. And I'm like, okay. So I want to cover Crimson and Clover. I just thought, it'd be weird because I didn't want to change the lyrics. And that was just the way I was. I wanted to, push the envelope a little bit because I just wanted to.
The original recording, so I guess psychedelic. And so what was you guys just
my reason for doing it? I mean, because Tommy's like I guess Kenny told me when he was asked what is it about? It was about LSD, Crimson and Clover. So it wasn't about really her. Mm-hmm. So specifically. So when people ask me what I'm singing about, it's like, well, I mean, I guess I'm singing it more literally, but not specifically at anybody. It's just being put out into the world is those sentiments, but it's not directed specifically at a person.
So at that particular point, coming into the early part of the 80s and whatnot, do you have a peer group? Is there a trusted circle that you can pal around with? Like normally, birds of a feather flock together as far as like people liking each other's music or whatnot. Like, was there a tight-knit community in the sort of the LA rock community by this point for you at least? Or were you still like,
no, I was gone.
Isolated
out of there. I was out of there, but in 79, I
came back to New York. Okay.
Went to New York.
So even in New York, like for that,
no, I didn't hang out. I didn't really,
I was also going to say, like, everyone was sort of going new wave in New York, and you're going straight rock and roll. Like, were you a fish out of water, and like, were you sort of upholding a tradition that you felt would soon sort of take a backseat?
I don't know that I thought ahead that much, that I planned it out or thought about, what's the future of rock and roll, or a lot synthier, that there was a lot of synth music going on.
Well, I mean, were you going to the Lower East Side in the early 80s to see groups like Bad Brains or any, like, were you at all interested in the movement that was happening in the Lower East Side?
Right.
Sort of.
I was interested, but I was working too much I was on the road the whole time. I don't even know if I was around most of the time. I mean, literally on the road all the time.
All right.
Pretty much from 1980.
365.
Through pretty much, I mean, at least through November, and then, depending on what the tour was, we were always working, and then be off through January, and then start working again in February. It was pretty brutal, and I didn't realize that till the pandemic hit.
Okay.
And then nothing was happening, and then I realized how much of my life I had been on the road constantly, and all these other things we talked about feeling separate, and being isolated.
Mm-hmm.
But I did, I definitely have friends that I knew once I was settled in New York and I had a routine, and I still have that sort of core few I can count on my one hand level of friends. Yeah.
Yeah, that's real life. Like,
yeah,
real people only have 2 to 3 people. Wait, I always wanted to know this. Okay, so from my point of view as a record collector, all right, I'll explain to you, Fonte. Well, you probably know already, but like for me, Boardwalk Records is almost akin to like Malaco Records.
Oh wow!
So
I know exactly what you mean.
That said, I always wanted to know, what was it about Boardwalk Records that made you choose that as your label? Because I knew that sort of as kind of as a second tier label for acts that were popping in the 70s for soul music.
Right,
like I know that Ohio Players wound up on Boardwalk Records for like their 80s catalog. I remember the 5 Stair Steps morphed into the Invisible Man's Band for the 80s or whatnot.
Well, Kenny would know so much about this because I think he knew Neil Bogart before we got involved.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
So Kenny knew him pre Boardwalk.
I didn't know that Neil Bogart started Boardwalk Records.
Yes.
So
yeah.
That explains the Ohio Players.
Besides Casablanca, yeah.
Right.
And he just liked me and he really liked me a lot and wanted me to be able to put out my record. So he said, we'll put it out. And he did, and he died like the week before it went number 1 and never got to see it go number 1, which really bums me out because he was such.
He died in 81.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. I did not know that.
But he was a real believer, and one of those guys that always looked great, was all sharply dressed, and just believed in me and believed in Kenny, I think, more than anything. So
yeah, everyone that describes Neil Bogart describes him as like the last true, like one of the last creatives, and that was a suit at least.
Right.
I mean, I know a suit's a suit, but whatever. Yeah, but I don't know. For me, though, I would say that like you were so ahead of your time. Was it weird to sort of have not a comeback of sorts, but just to see in a lot of the
Yeah.
Well, no. I'm just saying that a lot of these bands that started popping in the mid 90s, late 90s, started name checking like Joan Jett and Blackhearts, like, or even with your work with the Runaways. Like, for you, did you not ever think that the day would come in which you would see kind of the after effect of people that like grew up on your music, or especially like when the Riot Girl with Kathleen and
yeah, well, that was
like
always
the Key to
nice.
Kill.
Yeah, because they totally did tip their hat to me, and I knew it. So because they told me so, and it was great. It was great to see that. I mean, I always knew that whether or not people admitted it, that we'd have some influence, in life and to music and that. And it's really nice to see it confirmed and see people say it, and not just girl bands, but some guys too. And that's really nice. So
yeah, I was going to say plenty of times where like Kirk has name dropped you, or or I know that Grohl was definitely a big fan. I was there that night and at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when he joined you guys.
Oh man, what a night!
Yeah,
that was crazy.
So how did was that surprising to you when you got the news, or I know oftentimes every person I know that gets inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has the same sort of like nihilistic, if it happens, it happens, whatever, that sort of thing. But for you, was it when you got the news of you getting in, like what was the feeling behind it?
No, I thought I was very happy. Of course I thought, but see, I'm kind of used to not being up for awards my whole life. It's not really been what my career has been about, like nominated for a lot of different things,
Right.
It's not what's happened. So just the fact I got nominated, I thought was really nice, but I thought, I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm going to win this, but, and I still believe this to my core, that because Chris said it on stage that night, that they felt they had no choice but to put me in, then they forced their hand. So whether I would have really gotten in or whether it was that, I don't know.
I'll say this much because I'm part of that. I've been part of that. Well, I call the recreation of the 12 Angry Men scene, but there's like 35 of us arguing back and forth. Your name has definitely been, at least for my first year there, which I think was like 2011. Has constantly been like championed and argued and debated. Good. Well, we were joking about it's only a matter of time before you do your classical record or your soft album, but the latest album you released is your acoustic work, and how did that feel for you? Like for you, is it a thing where you need a new challenge? And
no, it was a way to we wanted to give the fans something different. I'd never because I had such a weird relationship with guys telling me, and my guitar teacher saying, girls can't play rock and roll. I always kept acoustic guitars really at arm's length. I'd never owned one. I never wanted to own one until about, maybe 10 years ago, maybe a little bit less than that. But
you mean 10 years ago you like finally like gave in and was like, all right, let me try acoustic guitar out.
Let me just have it because I can't always hear my electric guitar. If you're trying to write a riff and you really need to hear something,
right.
So I just had it, but not a good one, just a little shitty one. Then a couple years ago, we did a documentary called Bad Reputation.
Yes.
It came out. It was all about my career and my life and stuff. And when we did the premiere, they wanted us in LA. They wanted to see if we could perform a couple of the songs in the theater. And I knew we couldn't set up electric. And it was suggested that maybe we try some acoustic stuff. So we did it, but with the whole band. So it was myself, my guitar player, acoustic bass, and our drummer. And we played Bad Reputation and a couple other songs, and it felt really good. Actually, it felt a lot better than I thought it was going to feel. And like you could transfer the energy. It was going to be different. than electric, but it was still worked. So then last year, 2021 and 2022 is the 40th anniversary of both Bad Reputation album and I Love Rock and Roll album. Because one came out, they both came out in 81, I guess. Something like that. So we wanted to do some extra things for the fans and maybe record some acoustic stuff. So we thought, oh, we did that stuff for the premiere. Let's go in the studio, record a few songs. Once we got in there and started playing songs, we really just did everything we could do live. Once we started recording, we just kept going. And we didn't really plan on having an album's worth or two of material, but just wound up there and thought, what the hell? Just put it out.
Yes,
so
indeed.
How do you feel about it? Like
I feel good about it. I feel it's fun. It's different. We play some on stage, like we'll do our electric show and then do, instead of an encore, do like 3 or 4 acoustic songs. And it's been going over. We just started like a month ago, month and a half ago, doing it and see how it would go over live. Because, I don't know unless I'm in front of people. So they seem to like it. So we'll see what happens, and we'll see what happens with the stadium tour. We're going to see if we can work some into that. And if it works, great. If it doesn't.
What are those guys like now? Like Motley Crue and Poison?
I don't know. I don't know. I've met Def Leppard. We played with Def Leppard before. And but I've never played with Motley Crue. So I don't know. I have no idea what to expect, but it should be interesting.
It's weird to me. I learned this with Blue Oyster Cult. Def Leppard's album covers were more scarier than Def Leppard was.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, if Mutt Lange, like Mutt is he's too polished.
Clean and
he's too polished and clean to really like. I'm telling you, it's more the album cover. Exactly. If you listen to Love Bites, whatever, like this fucking harmonies, like it's just more enhanced California harmonies to me. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I don't know. It's weird. I never truly saw. I mean, of course, they create one anthem that will probably play in every gentleman's club from now to the end of time.
Look how you know that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I just meant, Sugar has a kick-ass riff to it, but I never considered I don't consider Def Leppard metal the same way that I don't consider the Police hard rock. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, people are loose with their terminology now. Don't you find?
Well, yeah. Sometimes people are just
classifying things.
Yeah, exactly. Right now, like where with this storied career and. Is there anything that you have yet to achieve or yet to accomplish that you wish to?
Oh, I wouldn't know who to say specifically, but I'm always interested in doing new and different things. I just actually did something. Did I mention that with Trombone Shorty?
Right? Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
absolutely.
It's new for me. I'm not always great with that because I'm good with knowing, being comfortable and doing what I know and that kind of stuff. So I have to try to get better with, just jumping into the unknown and not being so
getting out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, but being okay with that and being, you're gonna live, you're gonna be okay. Don't worry. I don't know. I think I'm ready for my R&B album now.
Let's go.
Hey, let's get it. There it is. There it is.
Let's go.
But Joan, thank you very much. For joining us and doing this with us. And we appreciate your work. I've been a long time fan of yours.
Oh, thank you all. It's been a real pleasure. Definitely.
For sure.
Thank you.
Enjoy the road. I've been a big fan too.
Yeah, be safe out there, Joan.
Yeah, you guys take care. Okay.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Joan Jett on Questlove Supreme. And we will see you guys on the next go round. All right. Thank you. Questlove Supreme is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.